Hi, I'm David Safin, Associate Professor of Digital Art and Media here at St. Vincent College. This is my office, and these are my office hours. The point of our show here is to introduce you to creative talent and to show you some of their work. Today, our guest is Kristen Shaeffer, a Pittsburgh filmmaker and Associate Professor of Media Arts at Chatham University. How are you, Kristen?
I'm great. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me on your show.
Did I get your title correct? It's Media Arts, it's Associate.
It is. Okay. It's Associate Professor of Media Arts and also Chair of Arts Design and Communication at Chatham University.
Just for everyone watching, I had Kristen's class at Chatham. I got probably the lowest grade I've ever gotten in my life in your class. I'm just kidding.
No. I remember it being, some excellent work coming out of that class.
It was wonderful. It was very productive. We had a great semester. I don't want to say what year it was though, because that would make us sad. So for everybody watching, can you give us a little bit of background, where you're from and how you found yourself not only teaching, but also creating?
Of course. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I went to Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania, a liberal arts institution, and I started taking, I was a communication and a theater double major, and I started taking production courses. It was not necessarily the thing that I went there to do, but I knew I was interested. I had been involved in morning announcements in high school through, the TVs mounted on the wall so that everyone in homeroom could see. So I knew I had this interest, but it wasn't necessarily what I was planning to study. But as soon as I started taking production classes, I really could not get enough of them, right? I wanted to make sure that I had every class that I could, because I just found video production to be so creative and exciting, and I just really loved it. I also think it was a good place for the intersection of both communication arts and theater, right? A place where both of these things really do come together. And so I graduated in 2003, and I did a number of related things after that. I worked in TV closed captioning. I worked as a producer in Washington, D.C. for some time. And then I made my way back to Pittsburgh, and I started working here at Chatham. I was team teaching and supporting other people who were teaching in the broadcast program at the time, as well as the media arts program, and earned my MFA here in those early years. And I feel like at that point, I just started making myself more entrenched in the things that were happening here, but while simultaneously continuing to make creative work throughout the MFA program, and then after that.
It's funny, a lot of that path is very similar to mine, except I did it here at St. Vincent. I also am a little older than you, but we won't talk about that either. But it was nice that we got to cross paths along the way at Chatham. It was a really great program, and I'm really proud to have the degree hanging on the wall of my office. I should also mention, I'm in my office hours, but it looks like you're having office hours of your own. Are you in your office?
It's true. It's true. I am in my office at Chatham right now also. And when you extended this invitation, I thought it was very appropriate that we would both be in our office hours at our respective institutions having this conversation.
What are typical office hours like for you?
Typical office hours include just being sort of present here in the office. And sometimes there are scheduled meetings to talk about advising and academic schedules. And then sometimes it's nothing scheduled, and people just sort of pop in and out to talk about what's going on in the department. Or as you probably well know, sometimes it's putting out fires throughout the day and trying to figure out something that needed to be done 5 minutes ago, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's that we have our scheduled office hours, but I always find that nobody comes when it's scheduled. It's usually just, if my door is open, the door's over there. If the door's open, I'm in my office hours, and it's a lot of pop-ins. It's a lot of fires. It's a lot of clarification that was not done in class, but that's why we do this.
That's it.
So you're here to talk about a film that you made, I think, what was that, like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little longer? Um,
Was. Mhm,
a
about
brief,
about 26, 20, well, throughout 2015, and then I really finished it in 2016 and had the opportunity to screen it throughout 2016 and 17.
okay, so it's called 349. I
Mhm.
have that right. And I don't want to get too much into it right now. I think it would be better if we just showed it because actually talking about the process might spoil it a little bit. So why don't we just go ahead and roll the film?
Great.
All right, welcome back. I think there's a lot to unpack with that. It's easy to see the final product and to not realize, the whole process that you went through.
Mhm.
And what I always found fascinating about it every time I watched it, but also knowing what you did along the way, is how do you come up with an idea like that? Where does it come from, and then how do you get the ball rolling?
So, one of the projects that I did when I was in the graduate program at Chatham in 2006 and 2007 was a really low-tech handmade animation that I did with watercolor, right? I recorded something in video and then I took those still frames and I figured out what that frame rate would be. What's something reasonable? Because, a lot of times when we shoot video, it's 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second. But you can have fewer frames than 24 and still see the movement and still see that as a motion picture. And if you're doing something that's really labor intensive, like hand painting frames or drawing or whatever that might be, it is really labor intensive. So when I was doing this graduate film, it was watercolor. And so I had printed out, and I don't remember for sure the frame rate for that one, but I think it ended up being something like 2,000 frames that I hand painted, sort of one after the other. And I actually really love that process. I think for me, it feels like maybe how other people feel about knitting or something, right? That I'm sort of throwing paint on something or painting something quickly. In that project, it wasn't a lot of precision, but throwing paint on something and flipping the page and taking a photo and just sort of doing that over and over again. And so after that, I really wanted to continue to pursue these kinds of low-tech projects. And so I had been thinking for a long time about doing something that would be collaborative. I also really love collaborative work, whether I'm working on a film set with other people, or with folks who don't have experience in filmmaking. I love that process too. And so I kept thinking about it for a number of years about what kind of film could I make that I could have other people join me who were not necessarily animators or filmmakers themselves. So something low tech again. And so I really arrived at this idea thinking about how people are connected to one another. And so dance felt like an appropriate way to do that. So the dance itself is about how people are interconnected and how they are all of these really important and strong and powerful relationships that we have throughout our lives, and using dance as a part of that. But then in the process itself, forming new relationships with other people and asking them, right? So for all of the time that I was working on it, I would go places and maybe at a film event or an art event here at school sometimes, and ask them to draw an image that represented themselves and someone that they have an important connection with. It didn't have to be a romantic or family connection. It could be anything. And what was so interesting about the process was that many folks wanted to, as they were drawing or handing me their frame, they really wanted to talk to me about the relationship that they had pictured. And I also felt like I was making connections with people throughout the process. So that's what really the whole project was about. And it was something that I knew I wanted to approach. And as a concept, that's really where it came from.
So was that actual dance? So
it is. Yes.
So you had to record that, obviously.
I did. That was really the first step. So knowing that I wanted to create something about connection, I think I remember that I kind of put it out on social media, and someone that I know through another arts organization said, you should contact this person, right? And so I had an opportunity to work with dancers, and they were able to kind of pull from their repertoire and create something. And so we recorded here in the studio, and I took that video and converted it to silhouettes and printed out the frames from the video itself. And then when I was working with collaborators, with folks who were drawing the frames, I would give them a still frame, and you really couldn't tell much about the person. You could really just see, again, sort of a silhouette and a piece of tracing paper, and I'd ask them to use that as a reference as they were drawing it. So the dance came first.
So when you're putting something together like this, I mean, obviously there's a lot of patience, and like you said, it feels almost like knitting. The editing must be easier in this case. Like the heavy lift is kind of done, and then you just kind of line them up. I mean, would I be missing anything there? It does seem like what we usually think about post-production, like we think of a Pixar or whatnot, that the entire thing takes years. But it seems like you front loaded all the work. So do I have that right?
You do. And throughout the screening process, right, if folks didn't know that it was done in that order, right, that a lot of the work came in, there's the dance, and then the exporting of the stills, and then the handing of people each individual still. The part that was the most work was really keeping track of, okay, David, here I'm giving you frame number 127, right? And then to take that back, put it in a binder, in like a sheet protector, and then I went back through and scanned each and every one of them, had a number, and put them back in order, like you described. So for folks who didn't realize that that was the process, sometimes they'd watch the project at the end, the finished project, and say, it's really amazing how the dance timed up with the music, right? Thinking that maybe that was all done in editing, where it was really done in the performance, the original performance.
So it makes me think about the conversation we can always have as sort of creatives about process over product, and how important is it for the audience to understand process. And I think for some films it's not as important. If it's just a regular narrative, it's fun to know the background, but it seems pretty traditional. But I don't think anybody could truly appreciate your film without knowing that, going into it and just saying, I remember seeing pictures that you had of you just like putting them up on the wall and having all these things go on, and knowing that you were at some of these events doing that, and thinking that gives me more appreciation for the product. So I like, for you, does that matter? Like, do you just let the work stand on its own, or do you really say, no, you don't know how much went into this?
In this particular project, I think that the credit sequence at the end is just as important as the dance sequence when you're watching it, because, to your point, I think knowing that this is really about 349 frames, meaning 349 different people, each creating one drawing that then comes together to make motion. I think that's really important. And what I noticed in all of the screenings that I had of the film, if it was at a festival or a screening with people that I knew, maybe here on campus or whatever it might be, I think folks would watch it and probably, I hope, right, appreciate it and enjoy it. But then when you get to the credits and it lists every name for all 349 people for each one of the frames that was drawn, that was when I would always hear an audible response, right? That was when I think the viewer recognizes that this is not me as a filmmaker drawing all of these images, but that all of it has been sort of coordinated in such a way that it's a collaboration between 349 different people. And in this case, I think that the process itself was just as important as the final project.
I think now so many, with vlogger culture and self-reflexive documentaries, that process is kind of part of the product. So I think it could have been very easy for you to make this a 10-minute film that showed you going through all of it and led up to it. But I like that you didn't do that, because it I don't know, it just felt like, watch this and appreciate it. And then if you want to extend it, it's more up to the audience and knowing you as the artist. Because I do think that the process here is part of the art, which I don't know. I was jealous of it, Kristen. When I saw it, I was like, she's on another level. I maybe one day I'll get there.
Oh my. Well, it's not my intention to make you jealous in any way, David, but I really appreciate those kind words a lot.
So you have been talking a lot about collaboration and your love for collaboration. And I remember a while ago, you made a short that I saw called, I think it was called Camera Work, Camera Play. Mm-hmm. And it was a collaboration with a little assistant that you had working with you. So can you talk about this collaborator that you've worked with and might still be working with?
Yes, of course. Yes. So when my daughter was, I think, probably about 1, that Christmas, I purchased a child's camcorder. And it's a child's camcorder in that it is, waterproof and drop proof and, all of these things. And so that summer, we made a project together where I used a DSLR to record her operating her child's camcorder. She's 11, almost 12 now. And we talk often about that being our first collaboration. That's called Camera Work, Camera Play, because we were arguably both of us working with the camera and playing with the camera together.
So any plans on working with her again?
Yes, actually. And I'll also maybe tie this into something that you said before about, in 349, the process isn't visible really until you get to the credits. But for about 3 years, starting in sort of the in pandemic years, we started working on a project together, and we wanted to do a low-tech animation. It was not intentionally timed to start during a pandemic, but the timing was such that I had just finished this other really tech-heavy project and wanted to just spend some time with her, and we wanted to work on this thing together. And so out of that is a project called A Girl Takes a Walk in the Forest. And we wanted to create a narrative story, something that was animated, where a child takes a walk through the forest and sees something sort of beautiful and glittery on a leaf in the woods. And she walks over and sort of picks it up. And we talked about how we would record this video. She would be in the video. She would help me write this story. And we would record it, and she would have to interact with nothing. And then we'd print out those frames, and we would use biodegradable glitter as the objects, right? And we would do that all in an animated low-tech process together. And so, when you come up with these ideas, you think, oh, this will be interesting, and it will take us maybe a year or two, maybe, and right. And so then 3 years, and then the editing and all of these things happen. But while we were working on this project together, I documented it. And I wasn't sure at the outset if we would just allow the animated project to stand on its own and that would be the film itself. Or I also considered intercutting the documentation, the video footage of us working on this together with the animated project. And so we got to the end of these, the end of the approximately 3 years, looked through this footage and recognized that you can see her grow up over the course of 3 years, and also see the two of us collaborating and working together. So, really felt like that was just as important to the story as the actual project was. And so this project that we've, just recently sort of finished and re-edited in more recent months is finished, and we'll be screening it for the first time at the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival just outside of Cleveland this fall. And we're both really thrilled about that.
So because it's still in that phase, I think we're only going to be able to show a little teaser of it. So why don't we just check that out?
The story that we decided was this. A girl takes a walk in the forest, and as she's walking down the path on the trail that we know, she sees something, and it's sparkly. She's drawn to it, so she goes over and she picks it up and she holds it in her hand.
Then she sees another one.
Well, wait, so where did we leave off? Does she put it in her pocket?
Yeah, puts glitter in pocket, walks forward out of the way.
All right, so we're all looking forward to seeing the final product there, but I want to make sure our audience knows where they could find it when it's done. So do you have a place that you can direct them to follow the progress of this film?
I do. I have a Vimeo account, so you could look for Kristen Lauth Shaeffer on Vimeo, and that's where all of my released work exists. And so that's where this will live once it has screened at festivals, and certainly Chagrin this fall, hopefully maybe some others after that. But if anyone is interested in following along where it might be screening, I also have an Instagram account that is KLS Film, and I really try to keep that updated when things are going on. Sometimes it sits a little bit quiet for a while as other things take over more of my time and space, but that's where I'll post updates on the upcoming festivals.
Well, we're looking forward to that. So I want to thank you for your time, but I don't want to let you go before I ask you a few questions that have become kind of a staple of the program that we've got going here, and they're film-related questions. So are you ready to answer some tough questions here?
I hope so. I think so. I'm ready.
Okay. So first and foremost, what movie makes you laugh?
I think a lot of times I think about what movies make me laugh as being kind of desert island movies, right? If I could only take one or two, or a few with me. I really love Young Frankenstein, Clue,
Oh, yeah, Clue.
Wet Hot American Summer, Knives Out, and recently my students encouraged me to watch the film Bodies, 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 which is a little bit slasher, a little bit comedy, and that one is one that I've watched a few times in the last couple of months as a result. That makes me laugh.
All right, next up, what movie makes you cry?
This is a hard one. I'm certainly somebody who's actually kind of easy to tear up a little bit at films, but there isn't really one that stands out as being like the film that makes me cry. But I will say, just generally, that I'm relatively easily emotionally moved.
All right, next up, what movie scares you?
The two films that really come to mind for me. The first time I saw The Exorcist, I think I was maybe 14 or 15, and I am like pretty sure I had to recruit someone to like sleep nearby for a couple of nights because I just, I couldn't shake it. But the films that scare me the most, and I saw that you asked this question of Deborah Hosking in one of your other episodes. I have a similar answer. It's films like the first time I saw The Talented Mr. Ripley, the idea that people could be so manipulative, or like the things that might really likely happen, they will really stick with me, and I have a hard time shaking it. I can watch that film now because I know what the story is, but I do remember for like a number of days really being kind of genuinely afraid, thinking about, do people do these things? Is this, so that kind of genre.
All right, so finally, what movie inspires you?
I think over the last number of years, I think of a film maybe like Roma, where every shot is so intentional and beautiful and looks like a moving painting. But I'm also really inspired by the work that my students create. And it's so exciting to watch the work that they create. Yes, because I'm seeing them discover what tools they have access to and seeing how they're using those things. But it's just so interesting to me to see how they think and imagine. And sometimes I see that student work come in, and I'm so motivated and inspired to maybe try something myself in that way. So, I think as maybe a filmmaker, almost every time I watch something, I'm inspired in some way. But I also can turn that off sometimes and just like be, a viewer and enjoy the experience as well.
Yeah, if you go through some of my films, a lot of them are a response to, ooh, a student really knocked me out, so I have to at least try to maybe keep up. It is really nice when you see them make something and you're like, wow, that's impressive, and now I better actually get back to work so
Right.
I can keep up with them. All right, so that brings us to the end. Obviously, now we're both in our office hours, and you know as well as I do, we can't sit here with our doors closed. We have to open them up and be available to anybody who just wants to pop in. So,
Right.
Kristen, I'm really glad I got to talk to you and to see you. I don't see you as much as I'd like, and as much as I used to. But again, thank you. I can't wait to see the film you made with your daughter. And yeah, I just can't thank you enough.
Oh, David, thank you. Thank you so much. It was really lovely to connect today, and I hope I'll see you soon.
And that goes for everybody watching. We hope we all see you soon. So see you later.